Hey car enthusiasts! Today, we're diving into the world of exhaust modifications to find out what gives your car more power. A muffler delete, a resonator delete, or a full straight pipe. Now, you're probably thinking, Doug, why are we talking about exhausts? That's like the least interesting part of a car. But hold on, because a good exhaust can completely change the character of your car. It's not just about the sound, although that's a big part of it. It's about unleashing that extra bit of power hidden within your engine. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the wild world of exhaust modifications. Alright, let's start with the muffler delete, probably the most common exhaust modification out there. The muffler, as you might guess from the name, is designed to muffle the sound of your engine. It's essentially a big chamber filled with tubes and sound-dampening material that smooths out the exhaust flow and reduces noise. So, what happens when you remove it? Well, the most noticeable change is the sound. Your car will have a much more aggressive, throaty growl, especially under acceleration. Some people love this sound, others not so much, but sound aside, a muffler delete can actually give you a small power boost. See, the muffler, while great for noise reduction, also creates some back pressure in the exhaust system. Back pressure is essentially resistance to the flow of exhaust gases. By removing the muffler, you're reducing this back pressure, allowing the engine to exhale more freely. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to breathe out through a straw. It's harder, right? That's back pressure. Now take away the straw, and you can breathe out much easier. Same principle applies to your engine. This reduction in back pressure can result in a slight increase in horsepower and torque, particularly in the lower RPM range. It's not going to be a night and day difference, maybe a few extra horsepower, but you might feel a bit more pep in your car's step. However, there are some downsides to muffler deletes. First and foremost is the noise. Like I said, it's louder, and depending on your car and the specific muffler delete, it can be significantly louder. This can get you in trouble with your neighbors and, more importantly, the law. Many areas have noise ordinances that restrict how loud your car can be, and a muffler delete might just push you over the limit. Plus, driving around with a deafening roar can get old pretty quickly, especially on long drives. Another potential downside is that some cars might experience a decrease in low-end torque with a muffler delete. This is because the exhaust gases need a certain amount of back pressure to flow efficiently at low RPMs. Without the muffler, the gases can become too turbulent, actually hindering performance. This is more common in turbocharged cars, where the turbocharger relies on a certain amount of back pressure to function optimally. So, a muffler delete can be a relatively inexpensive way to add a bit of growl and a few extra ponies to your car. But it's important to be aware of the potential downsides like increased noise and legality issues before you grab that Sawzall. Now let's move on to the resonator delete. The resonator is another component of your exhaust system, often located further down the line than the muffler. While the muffler's main job is to reduce noise, the resonator's primary function is to refine the exhaust note, smoothing out the sound waves and eliminating unwanted frequencies. Think of it as the conductor of your car's exhaust orchestra. It doesn't quiet the orchestra down like the muffler, but it makes sure everything sounds harmonious and pleasing to the ear. So, what happens when you delete the resonator? Well, just like with the muffler delete, you're going to get a more aggressive exhaust sound. However, the change in sound with a resonator delete is often more subtle than with a muffler delete. Instead of a drastic increase in volume, you'll likely notice a change in the tone and pitch of the exhaust note. It might become deeper, raspier, or more throaty, depending on your car and the specific resonator. In terms of power gains, a resonator delete generally yields even smaller gains than a muffler delete. This is because the resonator doesn't restrict exhaust flow as much as the muffler. However, some people find that a resonator delete can improve throttle response, making the engine feel a bit more eager to rev. This is because the resonator, like the muffler, can create some back pressure, although to a lesser extent. Removing it can reduce this back pressure slightly, potentially improving throttle response. It's important to note that these gains are usually very minimal, and might not even be noticeable in everyday driving. Now for the downsides. While a resonator delete is generally less likely to make your car obnoxiously loud, it can introduce some unwanted frequencies into the exhaust note, particularly at certain RPMs. This is often described as a drone or rasp, and it can be quite annoying, especially on long drives. Imagine listening to a symphony orchestra where one instrument is slightly out of tune. It might not be deafening, but it's certainly noticeable and irritating. Another potential downside is that some cars might experience a decrease in low-end torque with a resonator delete, similar to a muffler delete. This is less common, but it's still a possibility, especially in cars that are very sensitive to changes in exhaust back pressure. So, a resonator delete can be a good option if you're looking to fine-tune the sound of your exhaust without making it excessively loud. It might give you a slight bump in throttle response, but don't expect any significant power gains. Finally, let's talk about the full straight pipe, the most extreme exhaust modification of them all. This involves removing both the muffler and the resonator, essentially creating a straight path for the exhaust gases to flow from the engine to the exhaust tips. It's like removing all the filters and soundproofing from a recording studio. You're going to hear everything the engine has to offer, raw and unfiltered. As you can imagine, a full straight pipe results in the loudest exhaust note possible. We're talking ear-splitting. Wake the neighbors, set off car alarms loud. It's the kind of loud that makes people turn their heads and stare, some in awe, others in annoyance. If you're looking for a subtle exhaust note, this is definitely not the way to go. But with great noise comes great power, right? Well, in the case of a full straight pipe, the power gains are often more significant than with a muffler or resonator delete alone. This is because you're removing all restrictions in the exhaust system, allowing the engine to breathe as freely as possible. Think of it like this. Imagine an athlete trying to run a marathon while breathing through a tiny straw. They're not going to perform at their best, are they? Now take away the straw and let them breathe normally, and they'll be able to run much faster and further. The same principle applies to your engine with a full straight pipe. With all restrictions removed, the engine can exhale more efficiently, potentially resulting in noticeable gains in horsepower and torque throughout the RPM range. However, it's important to note that these gains will vary depending on the car. Some cars might see a significant increase in power while others might only see a modest bump. It all depends on how restrictive the stock exhaust system is. But before you rush out and rip off your muffler and resonator, there are some serious downsides to consider. First and foremost, the noise. I know I've already mentioned it, but it's worth repeating. A full straight pipe is loud, like really, really loud. It's the kind of loud that can damage your hearing if you're exposed to it for too long. And it's almost guaranteed to get you in trouble with the law. Most places have noise ordinances that a full straight pipe will violate without question. Plus, driving around with such a loud exhaust can be tiring and annoying, both for you and everyone else on the road. It's like going to a rock concert and standing right next to the speakers. It might be fun for a few minutes, but after a while you'll be begging for earplugs. Another potential downside is that a full straight pipe can actually decrease performance in some cases. This might seem counterintuitive, but it's true. As I mentioned earlier, exhaust gases need a certain amount of back pressure to flow efficiently, especially at low RPMs. With a full straight pipe, you're removing all back pressure, which can cause the exhaust gases to become too turbulent and actually hinder performance. This is more common in turbocharged cars, where the turbocharger relies on a certain amount of back pressure to function optimally. So, a full straight pipe is the most extreme exhaust modification you can do. It will give your car the loudest possible exhaust note and potentially unlock some extra horsepower. But it comes with a host of downsides, including excessive noise, legal issues, and potential performance drawbacks. It's not a modification to be taken lightly and is best left for dedicated track cars or those who live somewhere with very lenient noise ordinances. So there you have it. Each modification has its own pros and cons. Which one would you choose for your ride? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more car content.